Hello, my dear friends. I want to analyze a famous Dvar Torah in this week's parsha with you. Avram dispatches Eliezer to find a shidduch for his son Yitzchak, and he tells him, don't take a shidduch, a woman from the land of Israel, from Eretz Canaan, because the Canaanite people who resided there were deficient in character. Instead, he says, go to Aram Naharaim, which is where Avram's family resided, and there you'll find the shidduch. And Aram Naharaim was outside Eretz Yisrael. Yitzchak was not allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael. So Eliezer went to find the shidduch for Yitzchak. So now Eliezer comes to Aram Naharaim. Where is he going to find the shidduch? There's probably thousands of young women that potential shidduchim. How's he going to know who's an appropriate shidduch? So he davens to Hashem. He says, I want to make a test. The woman that I ask, could you give me water, a drink of water? And she will offer on her own that not only could you drink, but I will draw water for your camels. That will be, and he had 10 camels, that will be an appropriate shidduch for Yitzchak. So indeed, he goes to Orkastin, and the first person that he sees, he runs to her. The Chumash says Vayartz Likrasa, and he turns out that it was Rivka, who eventually became the wife of Yitzchak, and he asks her for a drink of water, and she says, not only you drink, the camels also, I'll draw for them as well. So now the question is, why did he run to the first girl, the first woman? How did he know that she was a girl? Because she was only 3 years old. How did he know that she was an appropriate candidate? So Rashi says, because he saw that there was a nace, a miracle that was happening when she went to the well. The water was all across her. The water came up. You know, we turn on the faucet, the water comes right out. But when you're drawing from a well, it's a whole business. You got to lower the bucket into the well, and then you have to pull it up with the pulleys, with the string. Rivka didn't have to do any of that. She stood by the well. She had a bucket in her hands. The water came into the bucket. So she was obviously a special person, a tzadekes. So that's why he ran to her. So the Mefarshim asked, so if that's the case, if he knew that she was a tzadekes, because the water, he saw that a miracle happened on her behalf, so why did he have to then continue with his whole spiel with will you give me water to drink? And she said, yes, and I'll draw for the cattle. And Eliezer stood there waiting while she drew for all the cattle. He should have stopped it right away. Why did he have to go make her have the trouble of drawing for the cattle? He knew already she was a tzadekes, and that should have been sufficient. So a number of Svarim all provide pretty much the same answer. They say that a person could be a big tzaddik to the extent that they're Baal Mofes. They could perform miracles, but they could still be decrepit when it comes to midah. They could be a mushchus, degenerate when it comes to character. And Eliezer wanted a Baal Chesed for the house of Avraham Avinu, and he wanted a Baal Midos, and therefore it was not. The fact that she was able to do miracles was not sufficient. The way I would phrase it is, when you marry somebody, you don't need to marry a Baal Mofes. You need somebody who performs miracles. You need to marry a Baal Chesed or a Baal Chesed. That would be my advice to young men and women who are dating. Don't look for a miracle worker. Look for somebody who's a Baal Chesed. So I have a problem with this. Here's my analysis. I have a problem with this Dvar Torah, because it would seem to me that God does not perform miracles for people who are not tzaddikim. And if a person even if the person is super special when it comes to doing mitzvahs, but when it comes to the mitzvahs between man and Hashem, that's the mitzvahs bein adam l'malkum. But when it comes to the mitzvahs bein adam l'chaveiro, if the person is deficient, if the person's character is poor, then that person is not a tzaddik, because there's two parts to the Torah and they're intertwined. The Chumash says in Shmos that Moshe came down from Har Sinai with two luchos of bris, and the word luchos is spelled without a vav. And Rashi says, because without a vav, luchos, it would be singular, luchas. And Rashi says the two tablets of the 10 Commandments, one set of tablets had the mitzvahs bein adam l'chaver, between man and his friend, and the other tablet had the bein adam l'makom, the man and the Akash Baruch Hu. So Rashi says shteim shavim, they were both equal. So the plain meaning is that they were equal in weight, equal in size, but many say it means they were equal in importance. They were equally important. You can't have, if you're a person who's Torah observant, you can't fulfill one set, the luchos with the mitzvahs bein adam l'makom and ignore the mitzvahs bein adam l'chaveru. It's one unit. They're intertwined together. It's luchas. It's a singular. And we talk about somebody who's a Torah observant Jew. We say he's a Shomer Shabbos, or Shomer Kashrus. Those the mitzvahs, of course, they're super important to keep Kashrus and Shabbos, but that's not the end. The end of all. A person who could be real strict and then very careful and medactic balacha and knows the Shulchan Aruch Mishnah. That's terrific. But if it comes to Ben Adam Chavero, he's deficient in his character and doesn't treat people properly. That person is not what we would call a Torah observant Jew, because he's missing out on 50% of the mitzvahs which are Ben Adam Chavero. So, to me, it would seem that if somebody is deficient in Ben Adam Chavero, then that even though they may be meticulous in Ben Adam Makom, God would not perform miracles for them. So if Rivka, if Eliezer saw that Rivka there were miracles being performed for her, I would think that shows that she had to be a tzadekes in both realms, both in Bein Adam L'Chavero and Bein Adam L'Makom. So then the question returns. So then why did he have to go through the whole test? He wanted a Baal's Chesed for the house of Avram, for the daughter of Avram Avinu. So it was obvious that she was a Baal's Chesed. Otherwise, why would God perform miracles for her? So I would answer the following: that there's two levels of chesed. Of course, if a person is selfish and stingy, so then they're not. It's inappropriate. It's not the right way to fulfill the mitzvahs of Ein Adam L'Chavero. If a person is selfish, and such a person is deficient in being Torah observant, and such a person is not a tzaddik. But so it was obvious that Rivka did chesed, and when somebody would ask her, she would respond in a positive way. But there's another level of chesed, and that is chesed that's not need-based, chesed that's self-motivated, where a person can't wait to do chesed, and even if there's no need for the chesed, the person engages in chesed. That was the chesed of Avraham Avinu's house. Avraham Avinu, in last week's parsha, he does the Achnasas Orchim, he invites the guests into his house. There was no need to invite them. Nobody asked them. They didn't. He didn't know that they needed the food to eat. They were traveling. They probably had supplies with them. But Avram wanted to do chesed, and then not only did he do chesed, but he gave them a royal feast. He slaughtered animals for them, and he baked bread. Everything should be fresh. How come? Who asked him to do that? And what they didn't. His three guests didn't ask for that. But it was voluntary. That is the ultimate Baal Chesed, where a person self-motivated, spontaneously, the person graciously and generously does Chesed. That's the Chesed of Avinu. And Rivka emulated the exact same, or she displayed the exact same type of Chesed. And that was the reason why Eliezer opposed that test, to see, without being asked. He didn't ask her to give water to the camels. She volunteered on her own to give water to the camels, and not only that, but she was so gracious that she didn't even care that the fact that Eliezer had servants with him. Why wouldn't she insulted? Why don't you help out? Why your servants are sitting here on lounging chairs? Why run and do all the work? And she was a young girl, so why wasn't she upset? Because she had this generosity of spirit. And that's what Eliezer was looking for, to see that would be to fit into the house of Avraham Avinu. You have to have generosity of spirit, and that's why, even though he saw that she was, there were miracles being performed for her. So obviously she was a Baal's Chesed, but he wanted the level of Chesed that of Avraham Avinu, with generosity of spirit and the graciousness, without being asked, and without, even if there's no need, the person wants to just overflowing with a desire to help somebody else, or to make them feel good. That's the type of chesed that Eliezer was looking for, and therefore was insufficient that he knew that she was able to perform miracles, and. The Torah is so careful in not wasting a single word or a single letter on things that are redundant and superfluous. But when it comes to last week's parsha and this week's parsha, the description of the chesed of Avram and the chesed of Rivka is so verbose in so many psukim. Why is that? It goes into all the details. So the answer is because the Torah wants us to have a living picture, not just to read about it and say that they did chesed. because a picture is worth 1,000 words. They want us to be able to, and each year when we read the story of Avraham and the story of Rivka, we see before our eyes the type of chesed they were doing, and everything that Rivka did and Avraham did. It says Vayaretz, they ran. Why do they have to run? Take your time. Do it in stride. Because they were so excited about the opportunity to do chesed. Avram ran and Rivka ran. Vayaretz, or Vataretz for a female. That is because that is the type of chesed that the Torah wants us to emulate. And so we live in a world where there's so much of the antithesis of that type of chesed. There's so much cruelty and the opposite extreme, terrorism. We need to not only be nice to each other, but we need to emulate the chesed of Avram and Rivka and go to an extreme. The generosity of spirit and the graciousness, not to complain about doing. Somebody asks us for a favor, not to be upset and to complain. Why do you have to bother me? And to do it, the generosity of spirit and graciousness. That's the type of chesed that we are supposed to emulate. I thought that a very good place to practice doing chesed is when you're driving, because it's easy to be selfish when you're driving and to not give other people the right of way. I had two experiences yesterday and today. I needed to cross the street. It was in the middle of the street, and I was waiting for the traffic to clear out, to stop flowing. I was standing there for 2 minutes, and then one person, I don't know who he or she was, they stopped their car. I said, wow, that's so unbelievable. They didn't have to do that for me, so I should be able to cross. Nobody else did it. That's a generous person, generosity of spirit. And then the other day, I was driving, I had to make a left turn. And I couldn't, the traffic was coming in the other direction and the light didn't change. And I was just waiting and waiting and waiting. And then one person stopped this car, and I wanted really to get out of my car and go over to the person and say, thank you so much. You're a model of chesed, the way it should be done. Okay, but it wasn't feasible. But it's a good place to practice generosity of spirit. And we need to think about that when we do chesed. How can we do chesed in a way that's overboard? And I talk out always about chesed, giving compliments is chesed. And I met somebody last week, and he was just overflowing with compliments. Overflowing. I mean, I don't even know if he knew who I was. He just complimented because he had a desire to compliment. That's the way we should be. We should look for opportunities to tell people that they're doing great and they're doing well, and we appreciate them. It has to be overflowing. That's the model that we should be learning from Avraham Avinu. So the bottom line is that to be able to perform miracles is wonderful. Halavai, we should all be able to perform nisim, like Rivka was, that the water came, that it rose to greet her. But even a higher madrega of greater importance, more important than being able to perform miracles, is that we should do chesed, the type of chesed of Avram and Rivka, which is just over the top, unbridled, unlimited, and unsolicited. And we should always look for new opportunities. And that is the type of chesed that the Torah expects us to be able to fulfill. Thank you for listening, and have a good Shabbos.